Hello and welcome to another edition of the e-commerce Odyssey podcast. I'm here with Max from Klar, and we're going to talk about something which I've been very interested in for a long time. How do you create a single source of truth for your e-commerce business? How do you pull in all these different sources of data to create something that will help you run your business better? So without further ado, Max, it's a big question. Can you tackle it for us?
Yeah, I can try at least, Trevor. Thank you for having me. Kind of really depends on where we want to start, with this question, because it's obviously something that many brands really need. And the big problem is especially for medium-sized business, because small businesses, they're usually in a stage where, the data they need is mostly qualitative. So it's really about just understanding, talking to people if they're in the very early stages, trying to just iterate like on a qualitative level, where do I have to adjust the product and my product experience and everything. So you don't really need big data, you just need the quality data, and that's usually happening in conversations. And the data side, you mostly just need some basic dashboards to kind of understand, how's my base metrics going. Then you have the big companies, you have the resources to kind of build up their like fully fledged BI team, right? With like 5 or 10 people in them to like build everything up themselves. But that middle section is kind of like the big problem. They already have the needs to kind of be able to go deep into their data, but they don't really have the resources to build out a full team themselves, right?
Okay, can we just start by defining what we mean by this question and what kind of things it would include? So what would you say is, and when we talk about a single source of data, tell me what kind of, perhaps the top few areas of data that we need to bring together and the problems that people have.
So, I think for me, a single source of truth would mean combining 3 areas of the business, meaning the acquisition side, with the retention side, with the financial side. Obviously, it does not replace on the financial side the bookkeeping, because you still need your accounting and your bookkeeping for legal reasons, but it needs to be accurate enough, to be able to make decisions on a financial level through your data, right? Because I think that's kind of like the base components that it means for me. So that means you would need to obviously get all your revenue data in there from all the various sources you may or may not have. You need to get all your marketing and marketing cost data into there. And then as well as your product costs, your logistics costs, your transaction costs, right? And that's like the core foundation of data you need to get in there. And not only just get it in there, but also get it integrated, right? So that you can obviously map these things across on various levels to really understand how things work.
Okay. So what would you, so let's take these things that, what kind of channels are people trying to integrate?
So obviously, I think, for e-com, it's quite, Facebook and Google are the 2 big ones that kind of everybody seems to be using if they have their own shop. And from our customer base, the next one that we see is Klaviyo as an email tool that people integrate with. And then after that's like kind of TikTok coming up now. And then after, probably Pinterest. Obviously, if you have an Amazon business, then you want to integrate with Amazon ads as well. But like those are the core ones really that cover, I would say, probably, I would guess, like 90 to 95% of the spend or the marketing spend that our customer base has. That is all like in this small to medium-sized e-com space.
Okay. So what kind of dashboards do you think that people should have in order to understand their business?
It kind of really starts, there's various things for these different parts of the business. I think something like if I could choose 2 things you need to have, every business should have, right? I think is the ability to have like a extremely well-structured P&L statement. So going from your gross merchandise value minus discounts and vouchers to your gross revenue, minus returns and taxes to your net revenue, and then minus your product costs and your logistics and transaction costs to your various contribution margins, so that you can really get like a good understanding of how your profitability and revenue lines are developing, and having the ability to slice and dice that across various parameters. So saying, hey, give me that P&L statement based on different countries, based on different products, based on different channels that I'm going after. So that's the one thing I would definitely, you should be having, because in the end of the day, really just it's about making money and really understanding where you make money and how profitable different areas of your business are really, really cool. And the second report that I think every business needs is a cohort report, which kind of combines all these aspects that I mentioned, the acquisition side, the retention side, and the financial side, all in one view, right? Because you can see how is your acquisition developing, how is your acquisition efficiency developing, and then how are you retaining and monetizing your customers over time, and are you getting better or worse at doing so, right? And a quote report as well structured allows you to do that. And that's also why, typically investors in the space, if they ask for one report, it's usually that one, because it kind of contains all these three core elements.
Okay. So let's taking my business, because I run an e-commerce business, we've always struggled with this kind of thing. So we have it'd be interesting, let's use me as a case study, right? So we sell a lot on Amazon, we sell on eBay, we sell on Shopify. We use a back-end system called Linworks, which is our e-commerce system. So that holds our product data, and it holds our cost data, and it does our reordering. We also use Xero as our accounting system. Now, we would dearly love to have a single system where we could just set this all up, and it would just run. And every day we could say, okay, yesterday we were profitable. We could look at it on a day-to-day or week-to-day basis, and we wouldn't need to. We wouldn't need to generate lots of spreadsheets, etc., which is what we do now. Is that the kind of thing which is possible using a system like yours?
So, like I said, we kind of not really including the financial side from an accounting perspective. Something like Xero is not something we're integrating with and planning on integrating in the near future. Instead, you can, go in and configure your cost structure so how much you're paying to your fulfillment provider, and your changing production costs for your cost of goods sold. You can configure that within our tool, and that's how we kind of generate this financial statement. But we kind of are not going after the bookkeeping or accounting integration right now. But beyond that, it depends a little bit on how you have things set up and structured. But that's something.
So could you? So you've got your system doesn't deal with overheads. So you wouldn't? Could you put?
So right now we kind of we are not including overheads. I kind of figured, originally it's not that interesting because it's not something that's really changing on a daily level. So I always kind of figured that, getting that information once a month from your accounting or accountant, whatever, is still plenty enough. But we got a request from a customers a few times now, so it's something we're thinking about including also into the future. But originally, we kind of said we want to focus on those things that are kind of like extremely operational and changing, which is kind of like going through the entire variable cost structure. So including product costs, logistics costs, transaction costs, and marketing costs, and leaving the SG&A side out of it.
So what kind of level of accuracy can you hope to aim for? And what I mean by that is, you always have, if your system will create a simulation of a business, right? So there'll be certain things. So, for example, with the courier costs, right? You can predict what the courier costs are. You can say, okay, these are the weights and these are the destinations, etc. But there'll be other costs. So, for example, maybe the item's oversized, and there'll be additional costs, and that won't be captured by your system because you're not looking at the actual invoices. So I've always found when I've made simulations like this that I couldn't get them more than about 90% right. Have you got any idea about how accurate your system would be when? So before it's actually reconciled?
On the fulfillment cost side, it obviously depends on the complexity of how your deal is structured. If it's relatively straightforward, so we offer, compared to other tools out there, quite a lot of flexibility to configure how your deal is structured, but it's not infinite, So if you have a simple deal structure, we can get to 100%. The more complicated it gets, obviously, the further we move away from that. We do, obviously learning with our customers on what are other common structures of how these fulfillment providers price their services. And based on that, we make adjustments to move as many of our customers to 100% as possible. But realistically, like you said, there's always going to be some discrepancy for certain class of customers. And also said, we don't want to replace the accounting side right now with that, because you still need it anyway. We just want to get to a level where you are comfortable making all your operational decisions from that. Right? That for me kind of means you want to get to 98 plus accuracy on the variable cost side. At that level, I personally would say, also with my background in e-commerce, I would have felt comfortable to make decisions based off that. If I maybe just get a few cents here, off and there. As soon as you start having massive gaps in some areas, then you can't really rely on that stuff anymore, and then you have to somehow do it manually in a way.
Okay, so do you take an order and then match the marketing costs against an order?
So marketing costs we do to a certain extent, product costs, logistics costs, and transaction costs we do fully, also breaking it down not just on an order level, but on a product level. So we would kind of break up the logistics costs if of that order and assign it across the various items that were included in that order, so that you can also break down product label KPIs to that same profitability level. Product like marketing costs, breaking it down on an order level is, I mean, you can do it, but it's kind of really like a imperfect science. It's something that we want to do in the future, but it's quite tough to do. It's impossible to do right, and just to get it directionally correct is already quite difficult.
So you don't, because attribution is pretty hard.
Attribution is pretty hard, and even if you have attribution, like assigning it to a product level, and then how would you distribute those costs, not just on the product, but also to the items? Sorry, so not just on the order level, but to the items within that order. So it's a very multifaceted problem that's not very easy to solve. So we kind of like, and also it's not really a big question that we're getting from our customers, like assigning marketing costs on a per order level. So it's not something we're focusing on right now, but maybe something for the future.
So is the real benefit to be have understanding your customers or understanding your profitability? Because it seems to me that the you're suggesting is the customer bit, which is either the profitability is difficult because of you've got these marketing costs and they're difficult to assign to orders.
So I mean, this is just a few of the things that our product does. We obviously also help them understand what type of customers are most profitable for you, how certain influencer campaigns in terms of generating profitable customers for you, allowing you to really slice and dice your customer base to understand where your best customers are coming from, how are they behaving once they are customers, how frequently do they come back, what other products do they buy once they have bought for the first time, how long does it take them to do so. So those are all things we help our customers answer. And now moving more into the marketing side, also just pulling together all the data from the various sources into like one easy to understand dashboard, so that you can always understand, how are your core KPIs, like your acquisition costs, your return on ad spend across the board, developing as you adjust things over time, and a few more things that are coming out in the next weeks.
Okay, so what's the benefit of so you've got your system which costs money, or a system like yours which costs money, and you've got Google Analytics and the analytics that come in the Klaviyo's of this world, which are free. What's the advantage? Is it tell me why it's worth paying for an extra system?
I mean, it's it's so much. I mean, at my previous role, I was a CMO at a company called YFood, which is like one of the top D2C e-com companies here in Germany, doing over 100 million in revenue now. And I pretty much had two people just downloading data, updating spreadsheets. So that's already like a massive amount of time savings on the one hand, because everything is, once you set it up, which takes like 30 minutes, like it runs on autopilot and basically updated every single day. So the easy thing is that you answer, that you save lots of time that you can invest doing something else that actually more value generating. And the other thing is obviously also you are able to go a lot more in depth into your data. There were quite a few things when I was at YFood that I wanted to analyze, but I couldn't, because I was simply limited by the computing power of spreadsheets and the time it would have taken me to build these spreadsheets in a way that would have allowed me to analyze it. And with us, it's extremely powerful. You can go quite in depth into your data to see what's going on.
Okay, so you talk about putting the fulfillment costs into the system and other variables. Mm-hmm. How important is it to keep these things up to date? I mean, my experience, these things change all the time. Is it a bit of you still have to do that? There's no way of getting around that. Or what would you recommend around that?
No, obviously, that's a data input. No matter what system you be using, that's a record you somehow have to maintain, no matter what you do. It is not something that's just flying into any system automatically just because you signed a purchase order somewhere. So that's something that you have to maintain. But the cool thing about our tool is that these things can always be time-based. So you can say, hey, this used to cost X, now it's costing Y, and then 2 months from now it's costing Z, right? So it's quite flexible in, using different costs for different points in time.
Okay, so let's talk about let's have some real life examples. So can you give me 2 good examples of how a company, you don't have to name the names you don't want to, have improved their business operations by using your tool, and what have they actually gained from it?
Sure. So the one side was one of our customers that used our reporting to kind of really identify which of their influencers were actually driving profitable customers, right? So kind of saw, hey, based on the discount codes that people used in their first order, they matched that up to their influencer database to kind of see, okay, hey, all these influencers are actually looking relatively the same based on how much it costs us for them to bring in a new customer. But now looking at the long-time customer lifetime values that these people generate, there's actually massive differences, right? So it really makes sense to intensify and intensify our relationship with those that obviously bring in the best customers. So that's one easy example.
Okay, can I ask you a question on that? So how did you calculate how did your system calculate the customer lifetime value? What did it pull the data in from Shopify and then look at other orders that had come from the same customers, or?
Sure, and then breaking it down on a contribution margin too. So we calculate lifetime value based on contribution margin too. So net revenue minus product cost, logistics costs, and transaction costs.
Okay.
Right. And then we can obviously group them by the discount code of their first order, and that's then how we calculate the lifetime value of those various customers.
Okay.
That's one way. Another way is that we help the customer to quite a lot with their forecasting. So forecasting their business, especially once the COVID time and sort of when not really went to an end, but kind of like the COVID e-com hype went to an end. It's really important to forecast how much business will you actually be generating next year, because obviously if you order too much, you have massive inventory, you're not getting the orders in, you're going to get into cash flow problems very quickly. And actually, once you have a really good cohort reporting, forecasting how much revenue you will be generating from your existing customer base is actually extremely easy. So we were able to take away quite a bit of the risk in their forecasting by being able to very high certainty predict how much revenue they'll be able to generate in the next year from their existing customer base. So they only had to forecast the new customer acquisition, which is still a challenge, but at least it was de-risked quite a bit already. So that's something we do, or we have done for our customers. We want me to go on? Or
yeah, fine. If you've got some other ones, that's very interesting. So tell me about, if you had because let's talk about my business. So I have, we sell a lot. We sell about a third of it's on Amazon, a third on the website, and a kind of third on other. And we have difficulty understanding the profitability of our products across different channels. Is that that's a problem that we have? And also, we have tried to assign kind of marketing costs to different orders, work out, where the profit, where the money is leaking out of the system. That's a problem we have. That's something which can be achieved.
Where the money is leaking out of the system.
Well, if you've got so for example, let's say you've got a price which is wrong in an order or in a product or something, or you're spending too much marketing on a particular channel, and so you want to drill down on the channel and say, okay, this channel's not making as much money as it should, or this product's not making as much money as it should.
So it depends if you define channel now as a marketing channel or as a sales channel. So is the channel now Shopify versus Amazon versus other, or is the channel
well, Shopify Facebook would be the website, and so Amazon would be a channel and Shopify would be a channel.
Sure. In that case, you're quite flexible within Klar to break it down across different sales channels. So comparing Amazon versus Shopify, other we don't really support yet unless you pump them in through your Shopify, right? Where there are extensions that do that, and then we can identify it as like an eBay order, for example. We have a few of our customers who do that, and then we can work with that and also break it down as its own channel. And then you can compare profitability across those quite easily, and can see how profitable are you in what area. So that's something we can certainly do.
Okay. So, what are the top 5 mistakes that you see people making when they're doing their reporting?
I think it's actually mostly quite basic stuff. They that really enable your company or your organization to actually work with data. The big problem, and also one of the big things that we are working on, is that this is all rule when it comes to data, is like trash in, trash out, right?
Yeah.
So if you feed in dirty data, it's really difficult to generate accurate, easy to read data. And most ecom businesses have the tendency to not really care about how well they organize their naming, their product naming, their tracking naming parameters and everything like that. So just prioritizing that too late is a big issue. We have built various ways to try to clean that up as much as possible and generate as much insight as possible from the historic stuff. But there are limits to what you can do. So just, prioritizing accurate, good naming of stuff, I think, is something.
Well, what do you think?
Important.
What does a good name look like to you? What does a good SKU look like to you? This is something I've always struggled with.
It really depends on the business. For some, most e-com businesses have quite lean catalogs, so for them it doesn't really matter so much. Otherwise, I'd probably be looking at having like a section there defining the type of product category. So it defines the category so that you can easily see what category it is, maybe what subcategory it is, depending on the size of your product catalog. And then beyond that, I think, it's kind of just probably like a random thing. Really depends on what the core organizational parameters of your catalog are, and those probably should reflect somehow in the SKU. But now it also means like changing the names of products over time, not naming your marketing campaigns accurately, so you don't really understand what type of campaign that was used to advertise. So those are all things that can kind of become generating insight from historic data, because you have this massive, potential value in there. But if you have things not named, it's quite difficult to generate the insights that might be hidden in it. So that's the one thing. The next thing is, purely just educational, really, on two levels. So the one thing is defining names for KPIs. So I used to be in meetings where, like, we talk about the number, like me and the retail head, and we were arguing about how much revenue was generated. And then after like 5 minutes of argumentation, we kind of realized that we used a different definition for the same number. Mm-hmm. And that can just lead to massive frustration. And it usually happens because different departments create their reporting themselves in silos. So I think just having very clear definitions for how certain numbers are defined is important, so that just everybody talks about the same and understands what you're talking about and has the same understanding of it. And then secondly is also about educating your employees, right? So usually there might be, on the founder level, there might be some level of data literacy in place, just because it's something they always kind of like maybe always had, or just had to always teach themselves. But then if we start hiring people, depending on how much experience they have, the data literacy is oftentimes quite low. Mm-hmm. And just really making sure that your people have the understanding to actually work with the data and how to read it. Because obviously everybody can read like, okay, revenue, budget was actual. When it comes to really drilling down and generating the insights from it, it's not always that straightforward, and it's quite nuanced, and you have to look at different levels to actually draw out the right conclusions from the data, right? So just really also educating your people there is another important thing. Third thing is then just as access needs to be accessible. Oftentimes, data is not made fully transparent and accessible only for a select group of people, and that might be reasonable in some cases. Maybe you don't want to send out your bank statement to every single employee, but I'm usually an advocate for making data accessible for everyone in the company. We also don't price our product based on seats or anything like that, because I actually want our product in the hands of as many people as possible. Mm-hmm. So how much was that? Was that 4 or 5 now?
I think you're probably 4, actually.
I'm at 4. So I guess the final one is called over-reliance or under-reliance on data.
Right, okay.
So I can go in either direction. So I think, for me, it always starts with understanding the person behind the data, and that allows you to interpret it, right? Especially small, medium e-com brands, they usually don't have that massive tons of data that like everything can just be purely data driven. It's always also a function of, okay, understanding what is the person behind the data, what are they trying to achieve, what questions actually might they have, and depending on what the answer to those questions are, you actually can make different conclusions from the same data.
Okay.
So I think not just relying on data, but also actually first investing in understanding the people behind that data is something that not many people do enough.
So, okay, what kind of level of detail do you think is necessary? Because obviously you could spend all day getting it absolutely perfect and going down to the nth degree. Where would you stop?
Where would I stop?
Yeah.
I mean, I think in the beginning, like I said, it's mostly qualitative. So you probably just need like a base, dashboards tracking costs and revenue really. But I would mostly focus on qualitative data. So speaking to people, getting feedback on the product, why they're using it, why they love it, why they don't. So that's very low. And then I think there's a, base set of reporting. And that's kind of like what we're building out now in Klar that you need. And obviously, I don't think we still have a little bit to go, but I think, I don't know, by the end of the year, maybe early next year, I think we kind of have like this foundational set of reporting that you really need as an e-com brand. And then beyond that, you need to have significant size, right? Because then the edge cases get so small, then if you're actually focusing on those things, then you either need to be massive, that these edge cases actually have real monetary impact in the end of the day, or you're focusing on the wrong things.
Okay.
So usually there's so much, benefits if brands at that level that can be like there's low hanging fruits that can be grabbed. That if you go beyond that, you're probably focusing in the wrong areas.
Okay. So like I've got last question for you. Can be about anything. What are you nerdy about? What's your outside? I mean, obviously, data is a pretty nerdy thing anyway. But what else? What else are you nerdy about when you're taking time off from being nerdy about data?
So what my pet peeve thing is, like I probably spend way too much time watching American morning shows on American sports. It's kind of like my
American sports. Did you say?
Yeah, it's like this.
Like
they have
sports?
Like these morning talk shows where basically just have 2 or 3 guys just screaming at each other, being in disagreement about yesterday's events in American football or basketball. And it's basically always the same discussion every single time. And I've been watching it for like, I don't know, 8 years now, and it's kind of like the same discussion over and over again, but I kind of love it. And
so it's the same. You watch the same morning program with the same 3 guys having the same argument.
There's like one primary one, and there's like 2 or 3 other which I like watching every now and then, and they're kind of just arguing the same thing, like who is the greatest player of all time, is this and this person, if he gets traded to that team, is that going to work out? It's kind of like always the same discussions, and they never agree. Like they always just scream at each other and tell each other they're basically stupid. So
you're into American football then?
Yeah, I mean, I every sport really. I think I played quite lots of different sports, and I think I can hold a good conversation on almost any sport topic, because I don't know, just follow kind of everything.
Cricket? Can you do cricket?
I understand cricket. I also lived in the UK. I understand the difference between the Test game 2020s and like all of that. So I think watched a few cricket game lives also. So.
I think we probably have to end it there, because you're going to start asking me something and I'm going to show my total ignorance. No. Max, it's been great talking to you. Thank you for sharing your insights. I'm going to go away and have a good look at my figures.
All right, thanks. Bye.
All right.